Hello, and welcome to a trio of presentations that will hopefully be an explanation of what the Bible means when it uses the words Satan and devil. I don't need to waste much time explaining what the modern church world means by Satan and the devil. If you find those terms in a Bible dictionary or ask your preacher, you'll no doubt learn more about the devil than you could have ever wanted. But it's very strange that so many different depictions of this character exist, and that opinions are many times contrary to one another about this character's nature, abilities, or powers. But we're not supposed to argue from opinion or tradition when we have the scriptures open to us. These things should be revealed in their proper light. So we're going to take a very close look at what the Bible means whenever it uses these terms and see if we can't get a more clear understanding. Speaking of those modern definitions, the Britannica website on Satan says, Satan is the prince of evil spirits and adversary of God. Satan is traditionally understood as an angel who rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven with other fallen angels before the creation of humankind. In summary, that's pretty standard, the understanding of this Satan character. Again from Britannica, the devil, it says, the spirit or power of evil. In the monotheistic Western religions, the devil is viewed as a fallen angel who in pride has tried to usurp the position of the one and only God. In Christian theology, the devil's main task is that of tempting humans to reject the way of life and redemption and to accept the way of death and destruction. The leader of the angels who's fallen from heaven because of pride. Well, here we have a number of identifying characteristics of Satan or the devil, and you would think with the emphasis put on these characteristics, it should be pretty obvious to find these things in the Bible. But I will have you note the contradiction in that second paragraph. It says, in the monotheistic Western religions, and then goes on to explain that there are apparently two theos, or gods, that are warring against one another. I found that a little curious. Well, let's get a look at this thing. Surely such a popular character would have no ends of depictions throughout history, so we're going to start with some older depictions and work our way to more modern ones. And of course, that is the first thing that pops into your head when you think of the devil, maybe especially if you're a fan of Monty Python. Here's a medieval depiction, and there's plenty of details to go over in that one. Obviously, this character must be found in the scriptures. And here's the devil on a great grill, torturing the souls of lost men. Here we have a depiction of a flying devil, no doubt causing all sorts of havoc in that city. And this is a depiction from the famous Paradise Lost of Lucifer cast out of his heavenly dwelling. And here we get into more modern depictions of the man in a red suit, horns, spade tail, pitchfork wielding devil. And this is a depiction that comes from the late 19th, but really the 20th century. And regardless of what's going on in this play here, I think that fellow is up to no good. Perhaps the most famous, this is the first depiction of Satan or the devil that I recall seeing as a child, but the title of the work is The Fallen Angel. He's not actually given a proper name, but this is very common stuff when people think of Satan or Lucifer or the devil in Christian circles. With such an important role played in the Bible story, surely this character is all over the book. So let's look at how many occurrences are in the Old Testament. The singular devil does not occur in the Old Testament at all, so that's a relief. The plural, though, devils, which could not be referring to a singular entity, is common in the Old Testament. Satan in the Old Testament only appears 19 times, but 13 of those occurrences are in Job. That just leaves 6 other times for the whole of the Old Testament. And famously, Lucifer is in the King James Bible 1 time. And in the New Testament, devil occurs 34 times, and I was not aware of this before compiling this study, but only 2 of those have a capital D in the King James. And Satan occurs 37 times in the New Testament, so that's quite a bit more than in the Old Testament. But how do we get these words, and what are they translated from? Well, Satan is a very, very old word, and it's variously transliterated into English, with Satan being an accepted pronunciation, and it means an opponent, an adversary, or an accuser, and the New American Standard Bible translates it accuser once, adversary 8 times, and Satan 18 times. So there's a bit of variation. And in verb form, it means to attack, accuse, or resist. And the NASB uses it 1 time for accuse, 2 times for accusers, 1 time for adversaries, 1 time for oppose, and 1 time as act as my accusers. Keep in mind that's exactly the same word. The noun and the verb are both Satan. And that's originally, it's a Chaldean loan word, which literally means adversary. So this word has had quite a history. It began in Babylon and came through the Hebrew to the Greek to the English, and it's still common in English today. And then, of course, Lucifer in Isaiah 14 is from the Hebrew word Hallel, meaning the morning star or a shining one. And I cannot make this more plain. It is simply a Hebrew name of the planet Venus, as we will see shortly. In the Greek, Satanas, as it appears, is an adversary, and the NASB translates it 35 times Satan and 1 time as Satan's possessive. And then devil is from the word diabolos, where we get our term diabolical, and it means an accuser, slanderer, false accuser, traducer, or a backbiter. And a traducer is one who accuses falsely, so that fits right in. And the NASB translates it devil as 34 times and malicious gossips 3 times. I'm assuming that's where the backbiter comes from. Okay, let's get into it and find out what the Bible means when it uses Satan. We'll be going through the Old Testament first and looking at its first occurrence on this slide. This is the story of Balaam's journey to curse Israel in Numbers 22, verse 22. And God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he was riding upon his ass, and his 2 servants were with him. So the very first time that the word Satan occurs in the Old Testament, it's the angel of the Lord. Very clearly, if we wanted to read it in place of the word adversary, it would say, the angel of the Lord stood in the way for a Satan against him. Now, given that this is the first use, it really should be cause for some consideration. This is the first mark against the doctrine that Satan in the Bible is a personal noun, or the name of some singular entity. Here it is clearly used for a title, or how the angel of the Lord is acting. He was for an Satan. Okay, we have not found the ruler of hell here, so let's press on. Still in the same story, and the angel of the Lord said to him, Wherefore hast thou smitten thine ass these 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me. So that to withstand, he's acting as an adversary, obviously, and he says, I went out to Satan thee. That's a verb usage there. And the next time we come across this is 1 Samuel 29, verse 4. It says, And the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him, and the princes of the Philistines said to him, Make this fellow return, that he may go again to his place, which thou hast appointed him, and let him not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary to us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself to his master? Should it not be with the heads of these men? And of course, this is the Philistines going to war against King Saul with David in their company. And they say that King David is apparently Satan here, lest in the battle he be Satan to us. And in 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 22, And David said, What have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah, that ye should this day be adversaries unto me? Shall there be any man put to death this day in Israel? For do not I know that I am this day king over Israel? So these officers of David's were Satan's to him. And reading of King Solomon's early reign, he says, But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. Well, what a relief. In King Solomon's time, or at least the early days of his reign, there was no Satan or adversary. Fortunately, that did not last very long. In the 11th chapter of 1 Kings, verse 14, says, The Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. And that word adversary there is, And the Lord stirred up a Satan unto Solomon. Reading on the chapter, And God stirred him up another adversary, Rezin, the son of Eliada, which fled from his lord Hadadezer, king of Zobah. And he was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon, beside the mischief that Hadad did, and he abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. So this fellow that God stirred up, another Satan, he was a Satan to Israel all the days of Solomon. Here's two mortal men who are called Satan. And in Psalm 109, David prays for his enemies, and he says, "Set thou a wicked man over him, and let Satan stand at his right hand." Well, if David was being an agent of righteousness, what is he doing praying for this evil, fallen angel, Lord of the demons, to be set at his adversary's right hand? Wouldn't you think that Satan would be a great aid to David's enemies? But no, with the understanding that this word means adversary, it makes total sense. David was asking God for an enemy to his enemy. What about in verb form? In the Psalms we have, "But mine enemies are lively, and they are strong, and they that hate me wrongfully are multiplied. They also that render evil for good are mine adversaries, because I follow the thing that good is." David was talking about they also that Satan for good. Render evil there is translated from the verb Satan. Psalm 71, O God, be not far from me, O my God, make haste for my help. Let them be confounded and consumed that are Satans to my soul. Let them be converted with reproach and dishonor that seek my hurt. So in these cases we've seen, David's Satans were plural, and obviously not one fallen angel going around the globe, stealing souls and causing havoc. David and Solomon's Satans were mortal men. Solomon's, we even have their names. And the last place this word occurs in the Old Testament is in Zechariah chapter 3. "And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand, to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire?" So in these two verses it's used 4 times, and one of those is a verb, to resist. So Satan was standing at his right hand to Satan him, and all that he does after this is leave. So he really doesn't do that much, he just stands there. And at this point we have to ask, have we found the supernatural, evil being of church doctrine that corrupts men's souls, disguising himself as an angel of light? Not really. But in Job, Satan has more mentions than anywhere else in the Bible, so we ought to look at that. And the margin note in my Bible, and in fact in most of them, have a little knockout on the side that will say, "or an adversary," whenever you see this word Satan in the first chapters of Job. And it reads like this: "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God, and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord." Of course, there are many curious questions we could ask about this. If these are the sons of God presenting themselves before the Lord, how could a fallen angel or heaven's traitor be amongst them? And on into chapter 2. "Again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God, and escheweth evil? And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him, to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And with this passage, it seems that we have a questionable responsibility for Job's suffering. God is saying, "Thou movest me against him," but in the previous chapter he said Job was in Satan's power, and Satan asks, "Put forth thine hand now," and then it seems that Satan is the one smiting Job with boils, so who did what? It's important to know that in the 42 chapters of Job, 40 of them contain no reference to Satan or the devil at all. After this, Satan bows out. So the only thing Satan has done in the Old Testament so far, and we have seen every time it is transliterated in the King James Version, is that he may have given Job some boils, and in Zechariah he stands there and goes away. And I say he may have given Job boils, and you're about to find out why. So who was the cause of all Job's suffering? Did Satan cause all of these calamities to befall poor Job? He lost his house and family and possessions. Job will answer these questions for us. And in chapter 42, verse 7, it says, "And it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, My wrath is kindled against thee, and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath." So here we see that the things Job speaks in this story are right things in God's eyes. Therefore, we can use Job's testimony as a witness to answer our question. So who is responsible for Job's suffering? We've already read this in chapter 2. And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him. So in the context of this verse, apparently God was moving against Job. And further, in chapter 19, Job says, "Know now that God hath overthrown me, and hath compassed me about with his net. Behold, I cry out of wrong, but am not heard. I cry aloud, and there is no judgment. He hath fenced up my way that I cannot pass, and he hath set darkness in my paths. He hath stripped me of my glory, and taken the crown from my head. He hath destroyed me on every side, and I am gone, and mine hope he hath removed like a tree. He hath also kindled his wrath against me, and he counteth me unto him as one of his enemies. His troops come together, and raise up their way against me, and encamp round about my tabernacle. He hath put my brethren far from me, and mine acquaintance are verily estranged from me. Have pity upon me, O ye my friends, for the hand of God hath touched me." So Job does not blame Satan or the devil for his calamity. And in Job 42, verse 9, the Lord also accepted Job. The Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all they had been his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house, and they bemoaned him, and comforted him over all the evil the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. In the interest of being fair, we have to ask, if Satan had taken all these things from Job, then why didn't God make Satan give all these things back? Well, the answer is right there. Satan did not vex Job, and Satan did not take anything from Job. God himself was responsible for Job's suffering. And this is my favorite one because it really drives home the point of what we're talking about when we use or read the word Satan in the Bible. In 2 Samuel chapter 24, it says, "And again the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, Go number Israel and Judah. For the king said unto Joab the captain of the host, which was with him, Go now through all the tribes of Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, and number ye the people, that I may know the number of the people. And Joab said unto the king, Now the Lord thy God add unto the people how many soever they be, an hundredfold, and that the eyes of my lord the king may see it. But why doth my lord the king delight in this thing? Notwithstanding the king's word prevailed against Joab, and against the captains of the host, and Joab and the captains of the host went out from the presence of the king to number the people of Israel." So it's very plain that the Lord moved David to number Israel. Now this story is recounted in the book of Chronicles. In 1 Chronicles 21, it says, And Satan stood up against Israel, and provoked David to number Israel. And David said unto Joab and to the rulers of the people, Go, number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring the number of them to me, that I may know it. And Joab answered, The Lord make his people 100 times so many more as they be. But, my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why then doth my lord require this thing? Why will he be a cause of trespass to Israel? Nevertheless the king's word prevailed against Joab. Wherefore Joab departed, and went throughout all Israel, and came to Jerusalem. Now, given the dialogue between the king and his captain, we are speaking about the same event, and atheists and skeptics have a runaway day with this, and laugh Christians to scorn because they can't figure out why the Bible says variously that either the good, all-loving God provoked David to number Israel, or his exact opposite, his enemy and controller of evil, caused David to number Israel, as it so obviously says here. So we have to draw some conclusion from this if both stories are true. So what do we conclude? Well, it's quite obvious from the story. God is Satan. Or if you want to say it this way, Satan is God. Now, saying that in most Christian circles will see shock and pearl clutching, but it makes total sense when you realize the Bible definition of this Satan word. God was acting as an adversary against David in this story, and so he can rightly be called Satan. All that word means is an adversary or an enemy. And from what we've seen in the Old Testament so far, I doubt we could come to the conclusion that this is some cosmic producer of all evil. And continuing the story, David said unto God, I have sinned greatly, because I have done this thing. But now, I beseech thee, do away the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly. So David rightly takes the blame, and he doesn't say, the devil made me do it. So to recap what we've seen in the Old Testament so far, in Numbers 22, Satan is an angel of the Lord. In 2 Samuel 19, Satan is David's officers. In 1 Samuel 29, Satan is David himself, and we learned that all of David and Solomon's Satans were plural and not singular. In 1 Kings 5, Satan did not even exist, and in 1 Kings 11, Satan was mortal men. We even have their names. In Job, Satan gave Job some boils, and in Zechariah, Satan stands there and then goes away. And in 1 Chronicles 21, Satan is God himself. So if all that this Satan, if we're taking that to be a proper personal noun, can do is give one man boils, is this really a cosmic prince of the devils, imbued with all kinds of wicked power, trampling the souls of the damned in hell? From this recap here, I would have to say, no, it is simply a common noun that can be applied to anyone that is an enemy to anyone or anything. So, is this the Satan that you've learned about in church? It's very important to think about what you've been taught about Satan and compare that to what the Bible does not teach about Satan, and ask yourself if they're the same thing. And just as a short review of where Satan is not in the Bible, and it is embarrassing that I even have to address these things because I believe they are so obvious, it's practically beyond the scope of this study, but oftentimes Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah chapter 14 are used to teach about this fallen angel, Satan, who was cast out of heaven with 1/3 of the angels, and they go around possessing people and whispering in men's ears and causing them to do all sorts of bad things. But if you'll read Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14, you cannot come away with that idea. I'm not going to go very deep into it, just read a few verses here and there. And in Ezekiel 28, it begins in verse 2 by saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyre. So in this chapter, or at least in this verse, we're talking about the ruler of a city, the prince of Tyre. Thus saith the Lord God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God, I sit in the seat of God, in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man, and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. So very plainly, Ezekiel 28 is saying these things to a man, and not to a proper noun, angelic being called Satan. And of course Isaiah 14 is very famous. But understand the lamentation here in Isaiah 14 verse 4, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor seized, the golden city seized? So apparently this in Isaiah 14 is talking about the king of Babylon. And later on in the chapter, in verse 16, it says, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, and did shake kingdoms? So clearly, in both of these passages, we are talking about rulers of nations or cities, and they are men. But what we're here to look at is verse 12 in Isaiah 14. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? And I will caution you to remember that the language of the prophets is highly poetic and symbolic. So let's look at some more modern translations of this verse. In the New International, how have you fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn? New Living Translation says, how are you fallen from heaven, O shining star, son of the morning? And the Berean Standard Bible says, how you have fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the dawn. So there's no Lucifer as far as these translations are concerned. So how did that get in the Bible? Well, I don't really know, but that is the only occurrence of the Hebrew word Hallel in the book. And there is a depiction of the Greek god Phosphorus, which the Romans gave the name Lucifer, which simply means the light bringer. And of course, phosphorus burns very bright and very hot. And the reason that the king of Babylon here is being compared to Lucifer, or Phosphorus, or the shiny planet Venus, if you go out in the pre-dawn, you can find Venus very easily, either at dusk or dawn, you can find it easily, but at dawn it disappears quite dramatically. It is one of the brightest objects in the night sky, but given its proximity to the sun, about as soon as the sunlight begins cresting the horizon, it vanishes. And I think that the king of Babylon here in Isaiah 14 is being compared to that planet Venus vanishing from the sky almost instantly. Okay, now we can get started looking at what the Bible means when it says the devil, as there are cases of its use in the singular in the New Testament. And because there are so many uses of devil and devils in the New Testament, I'm just going to pull out what I feel are the most important ones, or the ones that get the point across in the most clear manner. So just like we did with Satan, we're going to look for identifying details and characteristics of the devil in the New Testament. And in Ephesians 4, Paul urges the Ephesians, neither give place to the devil. And later on in this epistle, he says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Now notice what the devil is associated with: principalities, powers, rulers, and high places. This is all Bible language. Of course, a principality is an area that a prince rules over, and those in power are governors or rulers. High places, of course, high halls, seats of governance. And already in Ephesians, the devil is associated with these things. And in 2 Timothy chapter 2, and the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness instructing those that oppose themselves, if God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth, and that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will. So that word there for captive is also translated in other places as imprisoned or taken prisoner. Apparently the devil can do this to a person, but that person can then be recovered. And in Hebrews 2, for as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. That's rather spooky. Apparently, the devil has the power over death. James says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Well, that's a rather simple way to ward off the devil. If he is that powerful, all you have to do is resist him, and he flees. 1 Peter chapter 5, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. So apparently the devil walks about, and in 1 John chapter 3, he that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Well, have you committed a sin recently? That ought to tell you of what sort you are. And according to this, the Son of God was manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil. Now, as you read your Bible, keep an eye out for what Jesus Christ came to destroy, and you'll also get an answer to what this devil is referring to. So we've seen some descriptions of what the devil can do, but now let's find out what the devil is. And in Revelation chapter 2, we've already been over this idea. Fear none of these things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison. So this is a common association with the devil. He's able to imprison people. And in Revelation chapter 20, I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. So here we see that the devil and Satan are the same thing. But also, it has two other titles, that old serpent and the dragon. So there's a lot of different ways we can identify these characters, or perhaps one character with many names. In Revelation 20, verse 7, and when the 1,000 years were expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went upon the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. What are the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet? Already they are compassing the saints and apparently making war against them, and they all end up in the same place. So let's look at this dragon in Revelation. In case you think that the dragon in Revelation cast out of heaven is a story from the distant past, please remember how Revelation opens. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. So when this was written, the events of Revelation chapter 12 were yet future. This is not a historical account of some fallen angel being cast out of heaven. So Revelation 12 verse 7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought, and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Apparently, the dragon deceives the whole world. Keep in mind what Jesus came to destroy in the world. Reading on, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus. At this time, the serpent's home would be the earth, and he would make war with the Christians. And this is where most church doctrines get that third of the angels for some reason. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, notice the color of this dragon. It is red. And if you think that that old serpent is referring back to an event in Genesis 3, perhaps a deception of Eve, then you must also believe that Eve was arguing with a seven-headed, ten-horned, seven-crowned dragon in the Garden of Eden, which is quite absurd, to say the least. I think not. What about the beast? And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. So the beast has 7 heads, 10 crowns, and 10 horns, and it receives its power from the dragon. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. So this beast also makes war with Christians, and once again his power comes from the dragon, which was found doing the same. Revelation 17, And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit to the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now notice that this great whore sits upon many waters, and the dragon cast waters out of his mouth in order to hurt the woman and her seed, from chapter 12. Carrying on in chapter 17, And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Well, we've seen a lot of signs, but what on earth do these things mean? So far, we have the dragon, that is also that old serpent and the devil, making war with Christians, a beast making war with Christians, and a beast with a woman named Mystery Babylon riding upon it, making war with Christians. I take that to say that she is riding upon that same beast. That may be a leap in logic, but I think it's appropriate, given that all these things have 7 heads and 10 horns, yet the dragon only 7 crowns, and the beast 10. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life, from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Christians would find out what these things mean, but the worldlings would not know what these things mean. And the explanation given, And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. In prophecy, mountains are usually taken as powerful or large nations, on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. 7 kings over 7 nations, we would say. So John was writing about nations and kings, which should remind us that Paul was writing about principalities, powers, rulers, and high places. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So the horns of the beast are also nations. So the serpent and the devil in Revelation are nations and kings of the earth. You might say they were powers and principalities. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So the woman atop the beast is a city. So the authors of the New Testament when they say Satan and the devil are oftentimes writing about kings, nations, and cities. And I would elaborate on that and say probably the rulers of those nations and cities, in that they are able to compass the saints, make war with them, and throw them in prison. That all fits with what we've seen so far. So with this explanation given in Revelation 17, there's no way to take to mean that the dragon, beast, false prophet, that old serpent, the devil, and Satan is any kind of fallen angel, spiritual villain, or ruler of a burning hell. Those things refer to nations and kings and cities. Now, every time the word devil appears in the New Testament, it is always translated from the Greek diabolos, the singular. However, diabolos is not always translated to devil. Here's a good example. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good." Now that word false accusers there is the word diabolos, devil. Men shall be devils. Now we wouldn't want to accuse Paul of being a sexist, and so he says to Titus, "But speak thou the things which become sound doctrine, that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, in charity, in patience, the aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things." So apparently, women can also be diabolos. And keep in mind that these men that are diabolos and women that are diabolos, it is the same word used in Revelation 20, really throughout the book of Revelation, to refer to that old serpent that is Diabolos and Satan. It seems this doctrine of a spiritual wicked devil is just falling apart in front of us. What about Satan in the New Testament? Once again, there are many examples, but these will get the point across, given that we've already been over it in the Old Testament. In Mark 8, "And he spake that saying openly." This is Jesus explaining what must happen to him. "And Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get thee behind me, Satan, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men." Oh, as if Peter didn't have it hard enough already. This is the rock on which the church was built, and a disciple who healed men and raised a dead man to life, and Jesus called him Satan. So I guess Peter not only had the keys to the kingdom, but also the keys to the gates of hell, right? What we've seen so far, it should be very easy to get a grasp of the Bible's definition of these terms. Is there any place in the Bible where Satan is ever blamed for the wrongdoings of Israel? Well, you might search, but you won't find. No, it's like we read about David saying, "I have done very foolishly." The responsibility is always upon man. And in James, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death." Now there's a lot to keep in mind here. Every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust. That includes Jesus Christ, for he was a man. And also, we learned in Hebrews 2 that the thing having power over death is the devil, which apparently sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Of course, going back to Genesis, that is how death entered into the world, by Adam's sin. And later on in James he says, "From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts, that war in your members? Ye lust and ye have not, ye kill and desire to have, and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not." So from what we've seen here, evil cannot come from without a man, or a spiritual tempter, devil sitting on your shoulder whispering to you. No, sin that bringeth forth death comes from within, as we see in Mark chapter 7. "That whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him. because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. For from within, out of the heart of men, not from Satan, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these things come from within and defile the man. So there is nothing from outside you that can defile you. Jesus, of course, is hearkening back to Jeremiah, who says, The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And like we've read, For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil, and deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. Wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people. For in that he himself suffered, being tempted, he is able to succor them that are tempted. Now what did Jesus Christ come to destroy? Through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. And notice again, he himself hath suffered, being tempted. Where did we learn that that temptation came from? Yes, Jesus was made a man so that he could be tempted in the same manner and by the same things that tempt you and I. The same is said in chapter 4. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast to our profession. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now that cannot be more emphatic. In all points Jesus was tempted. That is no different than the temptations that beset you and I. So that ought to get you thinking about the most famous temptations of Jesus. Starting in Matthew 3, this is his baptism. And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water, and lo, the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, and lighting upon him, and lo, a voice from heaven saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. How about that? The thing that led Jesus to be tempted was God's Spirit. Think on that. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward an hungered, and when the tempter, what was that from James again, came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him upon a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Reading on, again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. So what is this devil? How does he have all of the power of the kingdoms of the world? And how does he have authority to give those things away? Who owned the kingdoms and the glory of the world? And who had that power to give them? It's a question we will hopefully answer in a coming study. And it should be fairly obvious from what we've learned about the devil and Satan so far, and where temptations and fleshly lusts come from, that Jesus was in all points tempted as you and I. No, this was not our Lord keeping company with some villainous creature from the underworld. It was merely the desires of the heart of a man, but they are countered with Scripture. So with all we've seen, and quite disproved the popular doctrine that the devil or Satan is a fallen angel and extremely powerful worker of wickedness that is active everywhere in the world, tinkering with men's hearts to cause them to sin. Where in the world did that come from? We haven't found it in the Bible. Matthew 9, verse 32. As they went out, behold, they brought him to a dumb man, possessed with a devil. And when the devil was cast out, the dumb spake. That should be a pretty good idea of what these devils, daimonion in the Greek, mean. And the multitudes marveled, saying, It was never so seen in Israel. But the Pharisees said, He casteth out devils through the prince of the devils. Or, as Mark records, and the scribes which came down from Jerusalem said, He hath Beelzebub, and by the prince of the devils casteth out devils. Now this is extremely significant. The only time the doctrine of a prince of the devils is ever given, it is from the Jewish Pharisees of Jerusalem. So why in the world can you find a prince of the devils or demon overlord being taught from Christian pulpits? It doesn't come from Christian doctrine. The only source of it is found in these verses. With what we've seen so far, and especially if this is your first exposure to this learning, there are obvious follow-ups and concerns and questions. Of course, somebody's favorite passage is coming to mind and they're thinking, well, what about that? We're going to try and answer some of those things next time when we ask, where do bad things or evil in our world come from? Who owns the world? Who has authority over it? And who's controlling the happenings in it? And who is responsible for the rotten shape that it's in? I intend to have 2 more shorter presentations covering these, Lord willing. And I ask if you have found this interesting or edifying, please do not hesitate to share it with friends or Bible study. If you have any questions about these verses or words or other places that I may not have covered, leave me a comment or send me an email and I will do my best to explain the thinking on those. But until next time, God bless.